There we go. Got the sucker finally working there. Oh, sorry about that. If you're watching this after the fact, I am Flintworth. Hello. And usually I do try to start this at least 8 minutes ago. Had some tech issues, but got it working finally. Go figure. Had to turn the whole thing off and on again. So, Anyway, I am looking forward to this today for a variety of reasons. But before I get to that, welcome to Creature Workshop, the show where we brainstorm all kinds of crazy character builds, monsters, scenarios, you name it. This is the second time I've done this weekly. Aiming to do this a bit earlier, get everything set up before, make sure it's working beforehand. But I am happy to be here now at long last, and I'm totally not basically having to go reset everything back up because I had to restart the whole bing bang caboodle. But today we are going to be talking about the fantastic indie game Cuphead. It is at this point, kind of a phenomenon, I would say so myself. It's on the Switch, it's on the PC, Xbox. I mean, there's really few places where you cannot see these two lovable weirdos, Cuphead and... Is it Cuphead or Mugface? Mughead? I should know this. I watched the goddamn Netflix show, which they should be having their second season starting up really, really soon. Or is it part 2? Hard to tell with Netflix. There's part 1s or seasons, you never really know. But today, though, we are talking about Dear Cuphead because not too long ago, I got a request to look at Cuphead bosses. Let's see, I want to look to find and credit the person who suggested this in the first place because... Come on. There we go. Here it is. Let me bring it up on the monitor. So all you lovely people. It was 1 month ago that the viewer, Knickknack, come on. And... Come on. There you go. But Knickknack was kind enough... kind enough to suggest we take a look at Cuphead bosses. They're looking forward to making their own D&D campaign based around the wonderful animated world that is, well, the classic-inspired 2D cell animation. In fact, I believe, I don't want to quote myself on this incorrectly, but I believe the whole thing was animated first with, actual gel... cell and all, I can't think of the word. Come to me. But it used classic techniques like you would see with Looney Tunes and Merry Melodies and Silly Symphonies to bring the whole game to life. Which, yeah, that's cool. It's awesome. I've been thinking long and hard about this actually since I first got this request. Namely because it's different. It's a unique one because typically you don't really see the whole mixing of I guess I would consider Cuphead to be kind of a mixture of like platforming as well as kind of like a little bit of bullet hell, if not a little bit a little spice on top, a little cherry on top of, well, kind of like almost Dark Soulsian hard boss rush. Like it's mostly just all the levels are mainly just boss fight after boss fight. And yeah, how can you not go and wonder how you can take that and apply that to a world of turn-based combat strategy that you would see in a game like D&D or really any mini tabletop RPGs. Now, as we go along, if people jump in and have any thoughts, please let me know. And if you're watching this after the matter, please as well in the comments give your thoughts, give your suggestions, because that's the whole idea of this workshop, to go and brainstorm some wacky modes. We can make our tables, our games, our stories come to life that much more. Now, as for me, I thought back and forth really how to do it. I guess I had a few ideas. Like the first one I thought was really, just let's go straight to the bosses. Recreate the bosses like you would think you'd see them, in the games. Just go and tackle that and worry about nothing else. But frankly, I felt like that would only be going after, half of the whole conundrum, the mystery that is, I guess, putting these two things together. Let's make it like a turducken of games. I felt like if you're going to go and really try to make these games, these things connect, these mesh, you just can't go and just directly attack just the bosses. That'd be like going after, half of my game turducken. Maybe I'd be going after either my duck or my turkey. I want to make a turducken though. So I started there, and I had a few ideas. The first one was to kind of recreate what you used to see back in the Nintendo Entertainment System days, where really which was kind of like the world a lot of Cuphead's designs and inspiration kind of came from, which was to, how do you say, like, it was a lot of like patterns. There was a lot of like telegraphed attacks, where let's say you're fighting almost like an Andros giant head, two hands kind of a boss, where you would clearly see them put their hand down on one side before whisking it past you, trying to knock you off whatever platform you're on. I mean, it was really clear, able to see kind of, things, which is all well and good and all, but when you are aiming for recreating a game that was initially more so, how do you say, inspired by, well, I guess another thing there. Oh, Purdue, you can't see that. That should be over there. If it isn't clear just yet, I am still getting a hang on some of my stuff, and sometimes it doesn't like to behave. Oh, that's the thing with technology, it tells you. Some days, just do that. Nope. There, I'm gonna read the whole silly thing now. Can I get that, please, real quick? So this is doomed to have technical issues today. That's the word. I can talk. Let's just show my little frog. There we go. Get that up. Okay, I digress. I wanted to fix it real quick because I wanted to give you an example of what I am, referring to here. Like, if it isn't clear just yet, I'm a 30-something-year-old gamer. I have, did my fair share of titles growing up, but there's one in particular that I was thinking of, an old game called Star Tropics. It's a crazy game where you play a kid using a yo-yo to fight various monsters across a series of islands trying to get your uncle, who just so happens to be abducted by aliens. How's that have to do with Cuphead? Well, hold on just a second. Because there is a boss fight you do with the big bad near the tail end that kind of shows a little bit of what I'm talking about here. Let's see how that is. There we go. All right, so give me a second. And there we go. All right, check this out. So this is like I said, one of the last boss fights in the game. And thank you to Beat That Boss for having this very convenient video on the side for me to go and just show real quick. But right here, this little alien dude is, there we go. There, perfect, see? You can clearly see right from the get-go, the game kind of teaches you how to face the boss from the forefront by doing its basic attacks, one left, one right, to give you almost a perfect idea of how to really go about the whole encounter. But in D&D, with turn-based strategy, it's not exactly unless you use certain abilities to set up the methods, the I guess pattern of your boss. Be like, okay, I use legendary action to put my hand down on one side of the field, and then on your turn, like, oh, that hand then goes. I mean, that kind of ruins the flow. That kind of ruins a little bit of, I guess, the setup, the tension of dodging these attacks left and right. That's why I really said the first way to go about is, arbitrarily telling you what you're gonna do beforehand. It'd be too slow. D&D is slow enough as it is in some cases, depending on how many players you have. So I went and thought, okay, all right. What if you just had it be just a series of, encounters of just ability checks? Like, oh, I attack with a mighty barrage of bullets. Well, then you run into the problem of basically, well, of kind of losing the combat. It just becomes, hopefully your dice, hopefully your skills play up you winning the fights, which you run into the same issue kind of started off with, well, it's all about RNG. And that's not really the point of a game like Cuphead, where it's all about learning the patterns. It's all about figuring out and developing your own skills. Yes, it does feel random in the chaos, but it's all about pacing yourself. It's all about figuring out, okay, where do you push your luck? Where do you pull back? Where do you focus on maneuvering over just blasting your enemies left and right? That's where I went and looked at my board game closet. And I pulled out and played with this lovely gem. Yes, I kickstarted a lot of stuff. I'm a board game nerd. What do you expect? I've run a YouTube channel based on D&D. But this game, the board game based on Bloodborne, had exactly the kind of mechanic that I was trying to find for our situation here. Now, not to say, I think we could do a little side note, you should never be afraid to check out other games, because you never know, you might find something that you can use, inspire, and make your own tables, your own DMing kind of sparkle a bit better. In which case, when I looked at this game, it has a very fun twist on the classic dungeon crawl. Now, I'm not sure many of you out there have played Bloodborne or any of these Soulsborne games. You should know that a lot of it is about, kind of like Cuphead, a lot to do with just, well, working on your skills, getting good, of trial and repeats, of dying, learning how you did wrong, and applying that the next time around. Well, much like I may have a problem with bringing Cuphead to D&D, the makers of this game managed to do just that. They brought the perfect way of bringing like a Soulsborne game to, well, a board game. In this case, they use basically little decks for every player, or it's kind of been inspired by deck builders, where you have a little tiny deck, you shuffle a few things around, but the point is you start every turn pulling a certain number of cards from there, and you know exactly what's in the deck. So it's a matter of, okay, using your deck to basically plan your attacks, kind of knowing how the other enemies will come at you. So it's really helps you play more of the strategy. It helps you know that it is a little bit push your luck, so you don't know when you should maybe run or dodge when you're maybe unfortunately attacking. But it gives you some control, some mitigation to the RNGs to make use of, I guess, your timing, your knowledge, your growing experience to beat the boss, to beat your enemies. And to that which I thought, hey, what if we did the same with a basic deck of cards? So what you're gonna do is you're gonna get each player 2 suits of the numbered cards. In this case, ace through 10. So try to give them, one of opposite colors. So in this case, hearts and spades. You give 2 suits to each of your players, and this will effectively, for your campaign, replace their D20. Now, for everything else that they do, use the regular dice, you use your D20. But for your players, everything else is this. Now, there's a few rules to using this. Because you're thinking, okay, how do we deploy this in your game? Well, simple. Whenever you ask them to, go out to do an ability check or make some kind of attack roll, your players, who will start off the game day with a full hand, so it's been all 20 cards, will then be able to go and basically play the certain, like a 1 or 2 cards to try to, well, accomplish whatever ability check, whatever skill check you're having them do. So for instance, let's say I ask my player to, hey, you're trying to jump over that big crevasse? Okay, make a skill check. All right, I being the player, be like, okay, I got, maybe a +5 to my dexterity, so I probably don't need that much to go over this whole canyon, this little hole or whatever. So I'll go and play 2 cards. Ideally, maybe I'm not really sure when I get over this hole, so I'll maybe play a 10 and a 5 to make my overall check with that +5 on my sheet, a 20. Kind of get where this is going. Here's the first rule. When they play cards from their hand, it has to be, you can only play 1 per a suit. So 1 from the spade and 1 from the heart. Now, you can use any combination of those cards. You can play 1 if you want, just 1, if you think that's going to be enough. So I thought at 15 would be able to make it. I would just play 110 and boom. Maybe I succeed, maybe I don't. But the kicker is, as they play cards from their hand, they essentially discard, they go to the side. So as they go throughout the game day, they might see their hand slowly dwindle more and more and more, to the point they may only have a few cards to work with. Okay, which brings up rule number 2. How do they get the cards back? Well, if they go and have a long rest, get them all back. Or if they do a short rest, shuffle them, they deal half of them back to their hand, the rest stay on the side. Or they go and get to go, once they do spend them all, the last way to get the cards is to basically, if you spend them all, you take your discard, shuffle it, and draw back up to 8. And that's what you have to work with. So how do you rip out? So, with those kind of 3 things in place, your players then will have, much like Bloodborne, the board game, essentially a dice deck, a D card deck, which, based on how they go about the day, about even in their combat, could, ow, foot fell asleep. It means they have to be kind of careful how they go about just, their average day, or even in combat, where, okay. Because you think about in combat, you're rolling d20s left and right. And, much like Cuphead, your players will then be kind of encouraged to get a bit of control of how they go about it. Maybe they want to, in the first attack, really, get that perfect crit right off the bat. In that case, yeah, if you guessed it, 2 10s. That's your nat 20. Boom. But as they go through the fights, as their characters, much like their deck, gets more and more exhausted, they have kind of the issue of, okay, how do they time their attacks? Do they save more of their high number cards to maybe avoid the boss? Or maybe they go and use some of their lower number attack cards to, whiff once or twice, if it means having a stronger defense. It's kind of like, a give and take kind of thing. Granted, I would have liked to have take a stab and try this out myself. Or maybe a little bit of a, how would you say, I'm thinking of, it'll come to me later. Bug testing, as it were, or even a play testing, that's the word. But that's at least my suggestion. Try to find a something like that, something that's a bit more tangible your players can use to really offset the RNG, to allow them to really plan out their maneuvers, their attacks, to really recreate the Cuphead and Mugman. That's his name, Mugman. I knew it would come to me. But something like that, that's kind of mechanic like that, even if it's homebrewed. But still, make something like that to really help your player side of things create half of the magic you'll need to really bring your Cupheaded world to life. What about the other half? Well, I know this is a big thing why I wanted to talk about this today, which was the bosses. I mean, that is like half the fun of the world of Cuphead. And I intend to kind of go and cover a few of these guys in, maybe not on a weekly basis, but a little bit here and there over the next coming months, because there's a lot of fun, different mechanics, a lot of different characters in there. I frankly would love to see my own games. And I think it would be kind of a good exercise today to show you how I go about making a lot of the creatures you may see me make or put out there on Creature Creator. So, let me show you one of my favorite sites here. And that would be... Where are you? There you are. Welcome to my lovely stat block generator. This place is basically where I make all of my stat blocks. It's free to use. It's based for 5e, as you can see. And in fact, you can see right now I'm just using presently one of my prior animatronic characters I made for, I think, one of my Five Nights videos. I think this was the second one. Yeah, it's Protector. That was based on the puppet. But let me go and clear that up. There we go. So, making your own monster can be kind of much, can be kind of hit or miss. Fortunately, for this site, it makes it really easy to kind of fill in the blanks and kind of work out how to go about building your monsters, your bosses, so to speak, in a way that's still easy to comprehend and to make it look nice. But you're not here to look nice. You're here to actually build something. And personally, today, I would like to build a stat block around the Frog Brothers. I don't think that's their actual name. They go and look it up properly here. But in the first range of bosses if you fight on Island 1, these guys are easily my favorite of the bunch. Let's see. I'm, of course, talking about good old Ribby and Croaks. I went to see these guys. Thank you. There they are. Who go through two phases. Naturally, they have their basic average boxing phase, which, if you didn't know this, they were inspired by Street Fighter characters, which I adore. But more importantly, whoop, they later form into that thing, a giant frog slot machine. What's not to love? But okay, before we get to that, let's go and let me show you some of the first things I try to keep in mind as I go and make any of my boss characters. Numero uno. One of the big things you need to remember is that when it comes to making anything, if not just for yourself, but something you intend to share, don't get sued. Don't go about basically making something that isn't already done by Wizards of the Coast. I bring that up because when it comes to making any of these things, it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of effort to make sure you build something that's not only, well, works, but is something that maybe you want to share it, doesn't get wrecked or destroyed. I bring this up because when I first started Creature Creator, there was a big old homebrewed, I guess, bundle of content made by someone who basically made Pokemon for D&D. Basically, you could run your own full-on Pokemon campaign using the D&D system. But unfortunately, it was taken down. Ironically, not by Nintendo, but by Wizards of the Coast. Essentially, it was riggedy wrecked because all the material basically was showing people how to play D&D without getting the actual player's handbook and all that. I bring that up so keep that in mind. I brought that up so you can keep that in mind as you go along and do all of this. So if you ever find yourself creating a boss that you could feel like is basically something that's already in the monster manual, your best bet is to, well, kind of refer to that, to just maybe create little notes on the side of how you can spice it up for your actual fight or whatever you're sharing. In our case, I don't think there's too many cases presently in Wizards of the Coast line of a pair of giant frog brothers boxing it out on their casino boat that could turn into a giant slot machine. So I think we're okay there. That's why I felt like there'd also be a good choice too, because otherwise you're stuck with choosing the giant slime ball, who, quite frankly, isn't basically giant slime. The vegetations aren't really that interesting. And gosh, who else is on that starting island? Okay, the movie kind of fun. Maybe we'll talk about them later. But either way, we're beating Croaks. It's too much of an iconic fight, and they're frankly some of my favorite characters from the Netflix animated show. So, as always, let's give these buggers our version of the frogs, of our Billy Wog brawlers. Was that name of a frog? Yeah, I'm gonna find a frog name. Frog name. Not sure. Something to make it my own, because that's like my mission statement here. If I ever had one for the whole channel, is if we're gonna make something, I want to make something that, yes, it can be inspired by things we love, but I also want to make it my own, our own thing, so I can have more fun, have my own unique flair, my own unique tastes to it. Let's see. I don't want scientific frog names, please. Because I want to have it in mind. I want to make sure it actually is a frog name. Not for animals, for frogs. Work with me here. Okay. There we go. Let's say yes. I like that. There we go. The Florida Bog Frog. You know what? That kind of works. So, run away. Florida Bog Brawler. Not a Grawler. Brawler. There we go. Alright. Now from here, it actually gets a bit easier. Now that we're not doing something that might get us sued, but we can now start to look more closely at the brothers, or ideally just one of them, as we go and fill this out. Now, size-wise. Now, if Cuphead, the boy, was, let's see, a medium-sized character. Okay, come on. I swear this is gonna be the episode of just constant tech issues. Do any photos? There we go. There we go. See, yeah. There's Mughead and Cuphead and Mugman. You know what? Screw it. I'm just gonna use a photo I got earlier. Nope, that's what I made. Actually, yeah, I'll use the thumbnail that I made. Right there. Oh, that is Sadako from last week. There we go. Look at that size comparison. These guys are easily a large, if not bigger, creature. There's plenty of guides, including the DM. I just closed my damn thing. Oh, there it is. Good. There's plenty of guides online to kind of give an idea of how much bigger somebody might be to one another. A basic rule of thumb is if small was like your halflings and gnomes, medium like, humanoids, large is typically, maybe the size of a very large, dragon. It's about the size of a large man, because that's how I usually picture it. So that's what we're gonna go with. Now let's see, humanoid. Oh, it's humanoid-esque. It has two legs, has 2 arms, and it can speak. So we're gonna go with that. I'm gonna go with, for a tag, and I'm going to spell this wrong, but that's fine. Amphibian. A bit of amphibian. Or is it reptile? I should know this. I went to college! A reptile or... Okay, yeah, I was amphibian. Ha! Shouldn't have doubted myself. Alignment. This is the tricky thing when it comes to the Cuphead bosses. Is that, yeah, while they're all out to actually, you know, beat the crud out of you, they're doing so basically because if you don't know the plot of Cuphead, you're essentially fighting the bosses to get soul contracts from all of your adversaries to bring it back to the devil. So, I guess you could say those guys are basically fighting in self-defense. At the same time, the fact that they sold their souls to the devil doesn't really speak to me that they are all, well, good. In this case, I'm going to say these guys are chaotic good because they have to be at least good enough to, you know, warrant some good favor to actually own their own club. Though I do wonder why it's mostly fitted out with, like, bugs. Yeah. So, chaotic good. They got their parts in the right place, but they're also looking out for, you know, themselves. Chaotic. Good. Alright. Alright, now this is where things get kind of wonky. Armor type. Now, when you select this, it is important to keep in mind, well, how they actually defend themselves, because there is plenty of other abilities, weapons that may be negated or avoided altogether, or if your, you know, players try to do something like heat metal. In this case, our boys aren't really wearing much armor. They're kind of like basically out there as themselves. Though I do find it funny that, let me show you this, that they're wearing basically shoes that are shaped like their feet, colored like the skin, but they're shoes. Slippers? Whatever the case. Let's see. So in this case, I would personally go for just natural armor. Armor bonus. Now, the cool thing about it is as we go along, we can hit this little puppy right here to boop, have it update and show us all the kind of values that go along, which is really handy. I find this out though, because it can at least help me, and hopefully may help you to learn what goes into making one of these sheets. So you kind of get an idea, if you guys you go along and make more of them, you'll have a better grasp on what the numbers mean. In this case, armor type, natural armor, typically is what would be considered for something that has like scales or is kind of tough. I mean, granted, Ribby and Croaks here, who we're basing this whole sheet on, aren't exactly, you know, tough to begin with. They're basically skins of frogs. But as I see it, looking at most of the bosses having to take so much hurt from the boys, Cuphead and Mugman, that it must be some kind of strength training, maybe something like that, kind of beat them up a little bit, hence why with natural armor, and you go with the natural armor bonus of 3. That's a good starting base, doesn't make it too hard just yet, and armor class of 13, you know, and this will go up, is a good starting point just for like the physical endurance itself. And I believe this does go and like automatically, yeah. So this whole maker, and I'll put a link to this, by the way, down below, so you won't have to go searching for this. Does actually automatically go up to all the values you may need for the other types of armor. But for now, like I said, sticking with natural armor of 3. Hit dice. These are things, at least for me, got very confusing from the get-go, because hit dice typically, I mean, it helps determine what your hit points are going to be. Now, the rule of thumb that helped me really understand what it all meant was that basically hit dice are like the monster's levels. So, look at the math here. In this case, if this was like level 5, much like your characters as they go up, it's the enemies would then get, you know, 5 times whatever, like, you know, their hit die is, which is determined, I believe, by their size. So you see up here, you know, 5 hit dice. Up here has don't lie. Get back over there. Should be seen. There we go. Hey, there we go. But as I pointed out, 5 is 10 to give you like an average of like 27. Now, just to show, whoop, that die will go down based on whatever size of the creature is. So, another reason why to make sure you get the size right, because that's getting important for their HP. Now here's the next big thing. That's all good and dandy and all to go and you know, make it seem like a lot of health or what have you. It don't exactly might work out to being exactly well fair. That's when I like to go and it's another site of that I like to frequent a lot, which is called Kobold plus Fight Club. I'll also put this in the description later. But this one is a great tool if you ever need to go and balance a fight and a counter for your players. Simply, you go and type in the number of players you have in your game, go for the level, and it will automatically tell you the values of, I guess, what would be equates to, you know, an easy fight, a medium fight, hard, and so on and so forth. I'm not sure how many of you all look at it, because I know myself for a while there kind of ignored it. But at the bottom of a lot of these monster sheets, there's that little challenge rating right there. In this case, it's a challenge of 1. So if I was going to put my floated bog brawler out to pasture, out to the slaughter, as it were, my boy would probably be swamped right away with a party of 5 for a party of 4 players at 5th level. Now I bring this up because as we go and build the creature up, much like an artist would with painting a picture or a sculptor creating a giant masterpiece in marble, you kind of want to look at references. And this site is a good place to make sure as you go and build along that your monsters will be at least somewhat balanced to whatever you're going to be throwing at your players. So, in my figurative Cuphead D&D game, and if I was going to be running like all of these bosses in about the same sequential like order they were in the video game, might mix things up, but the point is, I would see these kind of bosses be when my party members were, you know, at a lower level. So let's say they're at, you know, level 3. Okay. In this case, I can see easy, medium, Oh, hard would be around 900, which in this case, challenge rating of 1 would be, oh, still too short. So let's go here and bump it up to, let's go for challenge rating of 3. I say that because if I wanted to really recreate the classic fight, I would see you using, you know, 2 of these guys. So together that would be roughly almost 1,000 per hundred. Maybe a bit too much. Let's put it down at least a little bit. Okay. So let's say, yeah, they're around challenge rating 2 apiece for every one of my Florida Bob. Bog Brawler. I swear I can spell. I went to college. I have a whole degree. Went overseas even. Stayed abroad in London. It was fun. But okay. But with that in mind, we can now go and really get this whole starting section of armor class hit points and speed a bit more closer to what we'll want these guys to be in the long run. So in this case, I'm gonna go So I probably want something. There's 2 of these guys. Acceleration of 2 with more. Okay. So I'm gonna go over here. I'm gonna be using the right side to filter things down. So let's go and set it so this will show us all of the level 2 challenge rating enemies. And let's find something a bit more closer to what our characters may be fighting. Oh, perfect! Berserker! Alright. Okay, okay. Now, this is normally when you get out your monster manual to dig out Berserker to kind of like cross-reference how you're going to be going about this. In my case, I'm going to be using Roll20 because I already have my digital copy of the monster manual there. Berserker. Alright, here we go. Okay. So here we have the, straight from the monster manual from Wizards of the Coast, the Berserker class. Now, if you wanted to avoid making everything, everything you would have here already, if you want to just go and just run it right away, you can also go and just grab this guy. Never be afraid to basically cut out the middleman of all the busybody homebrewing and just use what's available to you. There's a lot of great resources out there. But in our case, we can see that, alright, for these boys, they get about around level 9 or 9 hit die, so we can start, maybe do the same with ours. And, armor class about 13, okay, so cool, we're off to a good start here. So, considering we're going to have like 2 of these guys, I am going to make it roughly, I think it's 6. That way, together it'd be like about 12 D10s of hit dice I'm going to have to work through. It might be a bit more than Okay, so 33 should be about, 66 overall at the average. And this also could mean if you're want to give them a real hard time, just to give them the full 260, so it'd be 120 damage altogether. I really do that a lot for my boss encounters. Okay. Moving right along. Speed. Speed, well, 30 is probably pretty standard for these frog boys. Swimming though, by all means, boop, shaboop. Probably that 30 there. Now here comes the fun part. Stats. I have a handy dandy Reddit page linked that I like to referred to. But whenever it comes to stats, you can always look up. There's a few articles. A lot of people kind of break it down, the ability scores, so that it's easier there for them to comprehend. For me, the one I like to go to is this one here by the Reddit user, theRapkin, from 4 years ago, that went through and described all of the abilities by the numbers, by the range, perfectly. That's helped me so much that I've gone along. So in this case, all right, strength. What I like to do is, I look at down the line, I just go through this list and kind of get an idea, picture what I know of that enemy, that monster, and try to find the closest to whatever it would be based on these descriptions. In this case, my frog boys, they're probably more around, I'd say, 14 to 15, just taking the passing glance, where they're visibly toned, they can carry heavy objects, and these guys are about the size of a house almost. They can carry probably, heavy objects, and the fact that they can wallop pretty damn hard. I mean, they're boxers. They clearly have worked out. Although muscular could be pretty good too. A lot of good options here. I guess, considering that they are just starting enemies and there's 2 of them, I don't want to go and just riggedy wreck my players right so roughly from the start. Yeah, I probably would go somewhere in the middle, like, because they're not like visibly toned. Looking at our inspirations here, they are muscular, so Let's go visibly toned, so that'd be 14. Dexterity. Okay, now these guys, yeah, they are pretty fast, at least fast enough that one of their attacks is basically turning into a fan. So their dex is gonna be up there for this. So definitely hit large, small targets. Yeah, I'd probably go. Yeah, probably go with 18 because 20. Though it would be, I feel like it'd be kind of fitting for these guys. They don't really dodge much of Cuphead and his brother's attacks. Con for Constitution. Now, considering how much damage these guys can take, at least one of them normally takes. Yeah, this is actually where I probably would see them being high. In fact, if you make any of these bosses from Cuphead's world, put that sucker high. I mean, which is weird considering Cuphead's probably the exact opposite. But considering overall that, oh boy, they take a lot of damage, that would be, yeah, 20 easily. Though I should keep in mind that it does affect hit points. So, alrighty, boom, it's already given a crease to to make it so you're gonna go with the maximum. It'd be 90 apiece. And notice how the armor class went up as well. Intelligence. Yeah, I don't think these guys are exactly that smart. Yeah, at least enough to go and expect, considering that they both have their own business, but not enough to go and not enough to know to not go and deal with the devil. I would say the same with wisdom. They seem kind of like dummies to me. Trying to make many. Actually, I would say not many recent decisions. Most of these characters seem to kind of like fight first and talk later. Yeah, so probably go with 8 for the wisdom. And charisma. Now, if you've played Cuphead, you should be fully aware that all the bosses have some pretty witty one-liners that they toss at the players whenever you die. Most of them are in like rhyming form, of course. And this, like, for these guys, at one point even say, crude and bad, because we're from the wrong side of the lily pad. Yeah, these guys have taken at least some kind of form of theater. So at least give them some kind of wit to be able to persuade or maybe intimidate your players. Actually, I'll probably go with hopefully 14. 14 seems like a good spot for that. Saving throws. This sort of thing is kind of iffy. It might be like your personal taste if you make any of your bosses. Oh hey, thanks, Wonder Smith. Thanks for chiming in. That means a lot. Let's see here though. Well, from the time for what you are here for, glad you can make it. Glad someone's out there enjoying what I'm doing here. What was I gonna say? Oh yes, saving throws. This really be up to your own personal flair of how you run your games. If it was me, I personally wouldn't put too much into saving throws because these guys typically just take the brunt of all of your attacks. In fact, even the ones where you can kind of go and like bounce off of them to really build up your powers, really, yeah, they just kind of dish it and take it no matter what. So I would have put it in there. But for role-playing's sake, I guess I would at least have strength because of just their background. In fact, yeah, I was looking at a lot more of the backgrounds, like strength would probably be in there, constitution definitely. Charisma, yeah, that'd probably be it for there. Skills, well, athletics, I'll probably put that in there, as well as good old, or is it acrobatics? They are basically jumping around the place. Would leave expert out. They don't really need it. Condition immunities and damage type. Well, that's actually something I would probably bring up. For conditions, unless you really want to embrace the chaos that is D&D that can might throw off the flow of your fights, that's where I would see wanting to have, even if you want to protect yourself from it, that's where I would see using, like charmed, immunity from that would be important, because it's the same with unconsciousness, stunned, even restrained, basically anything that would stop the flow. Because speaking from experience running games with enemies or boss characters based on were supposed to be these terrifying revenants or slashers like Freddy Krueger or even Leatherface, that the last thing you want to happen is to go on a rampage. You want to put fear into your players and have them go, you know what? You are now under my control because of Crown of Madness, and it kind of throws off the whole groove, throws off the atmosphere you're trying to go for. So yeah, that's where I would try to have a few of these. In fact, I'd say Blinded, be good. Charmed, yeah, definitely have that one already. Deafened, maybe not. Deafened, yeah, I'd play Deafened in there. Exhausted, nope, they're like freight trains. Frightened, nope. Grappled, nope. Can't really grapple that many of the classic fights. Incapacitated, nope. In fact, I think the only ones on these, out of all of these, I probably would leave alone. Would probably leave invisible. Wouldn't do paralyzed. Essentially, yeah, if an attack or ability would stop them, yeah, I wouldn't allow them to be affected by it. Which does run into the problem that, okay, what are you gonna do with your wizards, your spellcasters, your bards? Well, fortunately, Cuphead has shown that there are a variety of other levels where you can fight, mini enemies, ads even. In fact, I could see bringing in a few here just to spice up the fights. In fact, I think in the classic fight in the game, they spit out flies. So that's where a lot of those abilities would come in handy. But like I said, this kind of stuff is really for your flair, your choice on how to go about it. Always make sure to balance it for your table. Try to shoot for fun, not for total recreation, is my biggest advice. Let's see. Damage types, that actually I would leave alone. All damage. They are good for all damage. If you balance as well, they'll be taking a beating. They should be taking a beating. In fact, the more the merrier. Languages, common. They don't really speak too many different things in Cup World. So, common should be good, but don't be afraid if you want to go and play around with that, put some other things in there. Now, from there, that's where we get to the meat and potatoes, the abilities, the actions. For these boys, ability-wise, there's a good hearty to choose from on this Homemaker, which is done by, I think I neglected to say this earlier, was put together by Tetra-cube. Here we go. Yeah, Tetra-cube. Yeah, go support them. Give them cash. They're good peeps. They do a lot of good for the community having this whole thing here. But if you notice, though, if you do look at this later, is that it gives a lot of generic stuff. There's not a whole lot of things that are like ability specific. At least nothing that you consider to be mainstays. Like you won't see an option to add in like magic missile or the other classic spells like I'm drawing a blank here. Crown of Madness before, or even like the Arms of Adar, Prestidigitation. Yeah, it's the generic stuff that almost any game, any video game or otherwise, we'd be able to use. But because I don't want to go too much into this, because it would probably be an hour within itself to go and basically choose and, you know, pick different things to really outfit what your bosses are like. So I'm just gonna go and just kind of go with like choose a few base things. Like for instance, Pounce would be a good one I would probably throw in there. Now you see a lot of jargon like this when you first put it in. Don't be too freaked out by it. Let's see here. For the most part, what's really handy about this whole stat block maker is that it uses a lot of great coding to kind of like simplify it for you. So I'm just gonna go and put this. And you're confused about the formatting help. There's a little thing you can click to kind of give you a breakdown of how to use it. But in our case, with Pounce, typically it's something that would be an ability you would use to basically, if you move a straight line, you would be essentially using the ability to pounce on that character to deal some damage when you finished your move. So in this case, if I was going to be saying for my Florida Bog Brawler, which is a mouthful, quick side note, this builder also has a shorter named option, so when it does finally go and punch stuff into your ability descriptions, you don't have to have it say, if the Florida Bog Brawler moves at least da-da-da-da-da. Yeah, you can make it simplified. In this case, I'm going to just put down Brawler. But back to the ability kind of situation. Yeah, this is where things get more for your kind of personal touch. I try to, when I fill out my abilities, kind of look at what I've already done up to this point and try to keep it similar. Try to keep the same kind of stats or what's what I'm thinking for here, values. So for instance, one of the first things this thing asks for is if the monster moves at least blank feet straight towards the target and then hits it with a blank attack on the same turn, target takes extra blankety blank damage. Well, we already know that our boy can move at least 30 feet, right? Yeah, right there, 30 feet. So that's what I'll enter in for my first value there. And then hits it with a blank attack. Well, I haven't done any attacks yet, so I'm gonna leave that momentarily empty for now. Let's see here. Okay, Target takes an extra blankety blank damage. Okay. Strength saving throw. Okay, at least that I can answer right away. Saving throws. These are tricky. These you kind of have to learn over time as just a DM what really is kind of balanced for your type of game. For me, my rule of thumb is if it's easy, add 10. If it's medium, do it 15. Hard, 20. Very hard, almost impossible, is like 25. But so in this case, I want this to be kind of medium, kind of a challenge. I would put in probably just a nice little boop boop 15 for the challenge there. Alright, but yeah, that should be balanced for now. Okay, but I can't go much further here without adding in some action, so let's do that real quick. Now, this being inspired by a boss from Cuphead, I'm probably looking at multi-attack, so I'm going to throw that in there real quick. Boop, shaboop, and do. And already you can see how it kind of starts to fill out the blow here. What's nice is that it can go and like move things up and down as you go along. But to show I meant earlier about the whole nickname thing, make it shortened. In this case, Power said the brawler moves bada the brawler instead of the full thing. So please do yourself a favor, make use of that shortened nickname to just save yourself some, well, trouble with just dealing with having your descriptions be too wordy, because if you're like me, I like to share these around to all you lovely people out there. Anyway, but attacks-wise, yeah, this is where you're wanting to spend your own time really going to recreate your own style of monsters. More than a second. The basic one I want to give this lovely bloke is probably just a basic, melee weapon attack. Which, in my case, I make it based on strength, because the big boys and their whole boxing aesthetic. I'm gonna give it a name. In this case, I'll probably give it something quirky like right hook. Most of the coding you can just leave alone. If you're kind of curious what does what, once again, just check out this to really get a better idea. Otherwise, just fill in the blanks. Go and take out those question marks and put your own stuff in. So in this case, if it's a right hook, I would probably want it to be nice and close because there's good classic blow, so 5 feet. For the actual strength, I would I'll probably go with the D6s for attacks at this level, only because most physical attacks that your player characters may use would be probably D4s, but with this being a large character and with it being, frankly, well, once again, a Cuphead boss. Hey, gave me an egg! Welcome to my stream. I want eggs. But I would use a D6 for just working out the damage here. In this case, probably go for 2 D6s just to make sure it kind of just give a nice little oomph with probably bludgeoning damage. And then just action, boop, it's in. So with that, I'll be able to kind of go back to like things like pounds and really kind of add a bit more flair, add a bit more. What's am I looking for here? Flesh out some more of these abilities. But the bigger thing I want to talk about here is how to really recreate the fact that any of the Cuphead bosses happens in stages. Stages and typically in sequences. They kind of play off my earlier suggestions of using cards to give your players a chance to really offset the RNG of just rolling d20s, maybe hopefully hitting these guys. In which case, I would add on to my earlier rules, if you use cards instead of d20s, is that on your side of the screen, unless if they're just a basic enemy, this would like be disregarded. However, I would make the rule for you: they can use any of your monsters, anything inspired by the big bads from the video game, to make it a rule that you never use the same attack twice. Reason being is that it would then, much like your players being forced to pick and choose what values to throw back at you, you, in turn, would kind of set them to know what they may need to save for upcoming attacks. So, for instance, and if you're just running now, these cards basically would take the place of your D20, where if you have to make any kind of check, whether it be a skill, a saving throw, or what have you, you would then use these cards, in which case you would choose any combination of 2 cards, 1 from each suit. In this case, I have spades and hearts, and those added together would be what you would roll. So in this case, I was told, hey, pick a saving throw. Okay, big frog man stepping on me. It needs to be strength. My strength is 2. All right, I don't want to die, so I'm gonna put down maybe a 5 of my hearts, and I need a space to give my initial value of 13, plus my +2 for my stat sheet. Okay, 15. Do I pass, boss? Yes, you do. Cool. But after you use those cards, they get exhausted or discarded to the side, and you can't use them again unless you don't get those cards back until one of three things happen. One, if you take a long rest, you get all the cards back. If you take a short rest, you get a random shuffle. You take the discard, shuffle it, and deal half of them back into your deck, or hand as it were. Or if you're in combat and you just run out of cards, you would then go take out this card, shuffle them, and then draw only 8 back. And that's basically I have to go through the rest of the fight like that. So it was really like how I would go and just kind of balance the whole thing. But to refer back to, I was bringing this up with like your actual attacks from your boss characters, that much like your players don't have to kind of go, okay, plan ahead which cards are going to save for what, you would have to kind of like give them an idea of okay, what they might have to save for. So let's say, for example, for my sheet here, I already had 3 attacks based on, let's say, there was one that was maybe close range, there was an attack based on a DC saving throw where they had to like dodge a fireball, and the last one where they had to withstand being blown away by the whole fan attack. It's another DC. And on my last turn with that boss, he's making this for 3 people with this much work. I should repeat about that. Yep, I'm definitely a one-man show right here. Yeah, but you know, no job is too small for me. Give me an egg. Love that name. I really want eggs and bacon. Where was I going with this? Yes. So, let's say it's my turn. I know the big bad's turn's coming up next. I know in their previous turn, they used a special attack that required no saving throws whatsoever. And already in this fight, I've seen them mainly use at least 2 every round or so. Okay, so it probably behoove me for my attack roll to maybe not waste any of my large valued cards to, yeah, so maybe put down maybe like a 10, maybe not even that of attack. I'll probably use my lower level cards to save my bigger ones for future saving throws. Or it could be the case that I just used one, so maybe I have a 50% chance of not needing cards. So it's hard to explain without actually seeing how it plays out. But bottom line is that much like playing any kind of card game, like Magic the Gathering or Yu-Gi-Oh!, it's all about ensuring you save your cards for the right moment, to activate the right trap card, if you will, or counter at the right time. It's all about that gotcha moment, and it'll feel great for your players and you when you see them save that one card, use that the heart of their cards even, to pull out that perfect dodge or that perfect attack where, okay, maybe they won't go and save all their good stuff for, like, to dodge your crazy abilities as you go along. Maybe they want to go just use their best right away to maybe give that one final blast attack. Yeah, that'll feel good. That'll feel great. Let's see here. Where was I going with this? Okay. But that doesn't leave. That gets me to the point where you need to focus on stages. Now, there's a lot of enemies out there, not just made by Wizards of the Coast, but also by a variety of other like third-party companies that have like abilities that say, hey, you know, when the enemy drops to this hit point total, this happens. You're going to want to deploy the same thing here. Now, personally, if you really want to recreate the bosses exactly, that would mean you need to go and basically make enough attacks to play up the 3 different stages, which could be a lot of hard work. Like, Ribby and Croaks alone have, oy vey. Let's see here. I think at least 2 to 3 different attacks for each of their phases that yeah, would mean you need at least to put on their sheet 8 different attacks and abilities, which would make these stat blocks appear more and more like, well, like basically character sheets, which kind of defeats the purpose that most stat blocks are meant to be short, simple, and sweet. So that's what I would suggest in that case, to not focus on making more attacks, but choosing, maybe adding abilities that say, hey, stage 1, depending when you want for stage 1, but like for stage 2, say, hey, once your bog brawler gets to, I don't know, maybe when they've taken like, when they're about halfway, yeah, when they're at half hit points, their attacks, gain a +2 their hit die, and maybe they have advantage, something like that. Basically, kind of give a little bit of an edge. And then with the last stage, maybe in that case, all of the attacks hit harder and harder. Like, you have to play it by ear. You'll kind of get a better grasp of it as you go along. And frankly, if you ever do make a creature creator video on this, I'll try to do just that, give you like a better template. Be something better I can do within the span of, what is it? How long has it been? Like, yeah, 70 minutes. But how to say this without being too wordy? I think I already have it. I don't want to ramble too much about this. Bottom line, use your hit points to your advantage. That's why it's always nice to have a higher amount, especially with your boss brawls. So yeah, keep one at half. In that case, when it's half, I would say make it a bit easier for these attacks to hit. And when they get maybe like down to the quarter, then that's where Garrus get an advantage, or maybe they get extra damage to their attacks. And in turn, with their actual attacks you do, use your, well, the advantage that you are a DM to flavor up how these characters, these monsters, grow in power. Like, yes, it'd be fun to have, say, yes, I'm going to use this live attack next, I don't know how many turns when they're phase 2. Aha, I'm going to use his propeller attack. Haha. And yeah, no, it's basically, that's putting more work into it than what needs to be done. That's why I suggest instead, like, have like a basic actions, for, give yourself maybe one physical attack, maybe a few ability check damagers or whatever, and then just, yeah, use your descriptions to play up more as you go along in the fight. What could be, as a basic right hook, could be maybe a Falcon Punch, for lack of a better example, later on. Your players won't see these sheets, only you will. And frankly, what matters more to us is the math side of things. Let me show this here, like the 2d6 plus 2. The rest of it just flavor. And flavor you can do on the fly. And it does give you the added advantage of not being hammered down to using what's only on the sheet. Which in this case, I said right hook earlier, I may be better off taking my own goddamn advice and say, I said it would be like, physical attack. That way I know, for my own intents purposes, that that attack is always a... Hang on, let me bring this back up so you can see it. So that way, at least I know that whenever I use that attack, or use that... Remember, when I need to use a physical attack, I just go to that right there, that action, boom, set to go. In that case, that physical attack can be anything I wanted at this point. It could be a right hook, it could be a kick. All that's really that limits me is my imagination. And that's the spark that you always want to give yourself. That opening, as it were. That's the word I'm for, the opening when it comes to running your games. Never limit yourself, only expand. Hope that doesn't... It sounds like I'm saying you're basically an inflatable tube man. But how to go about that? Well, physical attack, I've already shown you how to do that. But I've yet to show you how I would go about giving myself like a basic DC check action. Let's see here. Well, honestly, let's see. This you might have to actually need your, well, probably one of these guys right here. Let's see if I want. Let's see if I have what I want in mind here. Because this might be something you might have to go and use your own resources you might find online, or preferably kind of look at the wording you might, because I do this all the time with my own monsters, look at the wording you might see for anything in the monster manual itself, and look for abilities or actions that are similar to what you have in mind, and just use that wording itself. Because I kid you not, one of the hardest parts of making any of these sheets by yourself is making sure that the terminology makes sense, because who knows, if someone looks at this later on and be like, what does this do? Because yeah, I don't think I have anything I can just pull to show you right away, which is a bummer. Maybe I can see this here. Yeah, no, that's nowhere near what I'm looking for. Well, actually, here, let me go and bring up one of my stat blocks. Where's my USB here? Oh, there it is. This actually would be a bit more handy than making it on the fly. So, if you've been following me along with the channel, you should know that my next video for the Creature Creator series is going to be another FNAF video. In fact, I'm looking to have that finished editing over the weekend and either have it out tomorrow or maybe Monday. Probably give it Monday, because my stuff tends to do better at the start of the weeks. I'm not sure why. But here, let me load in one of them. Here we go. This is what I've set aside already. And there we go. Here is my stat block from calling a Night Stalker. Now, if you watched, oh, hey, I appreciate that, Nick. Let's see here. Yeah, I appreciate that a lot, Nick. For those who don't have this up right now, Nick wrote in, "Thanks for all your hard work. It is much appreciated." And yeah, that got me a little bit fuzzy on the inside. I needed to hear that, but I digress. Night Stalker is basically inspired by the Nightmare animatronics from Five Nights 4, and this would be what I would use for like Nightmare Bonnie or Chica. So I already have here kind of show what I did earlier. I made them, be challenged rating forward, made it a bit harder. They're technically like a level 10 monster to how I usually make up my stuff. But the bigger thing I want to show is this down here, like my abilities, my actions for like hug here. That's actually perfect. This kind of is your kind of basic. I designed it to be kind of like a grapple attack, where it's based on dex. Now the wording here has things to make sure you include how many targets, how far away, what the saving throw is, as well as any kind of like conditions or long-term effects. So see, there's a whole range of things. He's kind of going to be like, here you go, blah, on the spot. But if I had to break it down to like all the things you need to have for any kind of DC check attack, it's much like your actual physical attacks. You need a range, you need to know what the dice challenge is, how hard it needs to be, as well as what happens when they fail. Now, if your attack is mainly just to be a large-scale attack like Fireball, it's a bit easier, okay? It's a range, you have a radius, as well as, they're basically duck it, recover, not get blown to bits. And the conditions that if they fail, they get the full damage compared to half. So that's easy to do for almost like 90%. But that's a bit generous. More or less like at least half of what we might be doing for a lot of these bosses. For conditions, that's when you need to kind of be more careful of what is put down on your opponent's, or in this case, your player's characters. So that's when you need to kind of be careful of choosing wording. Okay, if they don't avoid the attack, like you see here, that they are grappled. Okay, now there's actually a set of conditions, much like we tried to avoid in our characters. Like we went over this earlier, things like blinded, charmed, deafened, and all that. You need to know your conditions when you make these, so I advise looking at that, because while your boss characters probably wouldn't get hurt by some of this stuff, your player characters probably could, especially stunned, because some of those wallopes are hard. But the bigger thing is that if we're going to use my stage increase, as I mentioned earlier, that, yeah, you will need to really consider, okay, it's not like the same as like, an attack. Oh, your attack hits hard, you get more damage. In this case, maybe you just bump up the DC challenge a little bit more. I mean, at most, I would say maybe increase the value by 1. 2 could be a bit, like, a bit much. Doubling it would be just murder. What I mean by that is that if you see here, I say, like, for my hug attack, if I was going to use like this stage increase, I would say DC 14. If it goes to stage 2, it may be a DC of 15, then maybe up to a 16. If I wanted to be kind to my players. If I wanted to be more tough, I'd probably see, 16 and then 18. I would never go and be like, you know what? It's 20 now. Go from 14 to 20, because screw you. No. So pace yourself when it comes to those save and throw build up. I feel like it might be something I should take the time in a creature creator video to really explain out more thoroughly later on. But for a little brass task, rough on the nose kind of thing like this, yeah, that is probably it's about as simple and clear as I can make it with what I have in front of me right here and now. That said, if you have any questions, by all means, feel free to ask them now or in the comments below as we go, and after this is finished recording and uploaded, I'll keep an eye on that and answer them as they go along. Or if you have any suggestions on how to make this better, please share them. But for my little nitty-gritty first kind of introduction into looking at Cuphead bosses, that's really about as much as I think I can cover today. So, if that is the case, let me go and bring up this. There we go. Ha! There we go. That all said, thank you so much for watching today and for hanging out with me for as long as you did. I don't think this will be the last I'll be talking about Cuphead. I feel like there's a lot of cool bosses in here I would love to take a bit more of a thorough look and spend the entire time talking about. I would like to especially look at some of the bosses, like the one with the pirate and his ship. I think it's in the second series of Islands. Yeah, the second Islands like boss lineup. I'd love to talk about him. I would love to talk about some of the more like the moon or the genie. But like, I only have an hour and a half, and I don't want to talk yours off too much because, yeah, it's been a long day. It's been a good long day, and thank you, Lamb, for watching here to the end. I will be back again next week. This time around, I'll be joined by my lovely fiancé, LRChickadee. We're going to be talking about a game near and dear to both of our hearts. I'm referring to the wonderful MMO RPG Final Fantasy XIV. We're going to be talking about a great serpent that is known for Scream, that it comes from the Shadowbringers expansion, that I cannot wait to just take the time to really kind of talk to her about our various ideas of how you bring that kind of character into a D&D game, because he's a cutie. But yeah, I don't want to talk much about that. I want to save more of that for next week. Oh, Pioneer Travel, one of my favorite people ever. They are actually a big backer and supporter to a lot of stuff I do here. They are totally, they don't really like sponsor me, but they usually help me out a lot. So if you ever need a good travel agent, I would go say check them out. Yeah. I don't want to talk too much more. Love the dab. What was I going to say? Lost my train of thought. Yes, if you haven't already, like and subscribe. If you don't, do not worry. That's okay. You're beautiful. I love you anyway. And I will, see you soon next week. Have a great weekend. Have a great Friday. Don't party too hard tonight. Don't do anything I wouldn't do. And yeah. Oh. Bye. Oh. It's not stopping. It's not stopping. What? Yes. Oh, OBS. You and I need to have a talk here. Oh, you gotta love when things don't work right. Okay. This is the end for sure. See you next